And as you guys probably know, because you watch the Godlogic Project every week, I never know when we're live from the Sling Studio. But hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty. This is the Godlogic Project. Tonight we have a very, very special, very interesting conversation about Narcan. Tomorrow's the Narcan, the free Narcan giveaway here in Pasco County. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend of mine come in to give us her Narcan testimony. So we're going to do that. But first, the intro music. Hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and this is the Godlogic Project.
Shut up, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Haggerty. That's Mike Houston telling me to shut up, as always. Tonight we have, this is kind of a interview we put together really pretty quick because it just the timing of the thing. So I'm volunteering at a Narcan giveaway tomorrow at CCWC here in Pasco County, and a friend of mine saw it, and we shared her testimony about Narcan with her son with me, and I said, well, let's see if we can't do the day before the Narcan giveaway, have you on live, and let's do a podcast about your testimony relative to the Narcan, and then that'll lead well into the giveaway, the free giveaway tomorrow, where we're volunteering. So anyway, I would like to introduce, in fact, ladies, if you would introduce yourselves.
Okay.
What's your name, Sherry?
Oh, hi, I'm Sherry. Here's a testimony I never thought I'd give.
And Miss Harrison, what's your name?
Susan.
Susan.
Now everybody knows. And I was invited by my friend Sherry, so I'm just here to support, and I am a helper.
Well, Sherry and I have known each other for a long time, except I didn't realize your story with the Narcan with your son. So that was, she asked if she could then volunteer with me, and I said, well, let's do that, yes, but let's also do a podcast, and we talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to give the audience a little bit of insight into Narcan. I happen to have because of the church I work at, I happen to have Narcan handy. What are the odds? Narcan is a nasal spray that you give to folks that have OD'd off of opiates. So it's ineffective for things like cocaine or alcohol or methamphetamines or anything like that, but it's particularly effective for bringing people back from an opiate overdose. Now, here's the thing with an opiate overdose, it is a respiratory issue. So what happens is the brainstem relaxes so much that they stop breathing. This displaces, for lack of a better term, it displaces the opiates temporarily, so you can then get them breathing again and then get them medical attention. It's important that we understand that this is good for about 30 to 90 minutes, and if there's a lot of opiates in their system, once this wears off, they can go back into overdose again. So this is a temporary life-saving window, this Narcan, for folks that have accidentally overdosed on opiates. Now, there is the statistics, and I'll pull them up on the computer, but the statistics for this is absolutely amazing. This Narcan has been applied something like 26,000 times, 26,500 times by lay persons to save somebody they love. So if you're not familiar with the opioid epidemic, it's not just here in Florida, not just here in Pasco County, but it's everywhere. It is pain pills. Back when we had the pain mills, just giving this stuff away, writing prescriptions. Everybody's making a fortune. That's kind of been busted up, and they've all done the perp walk, and they've all gone to jail. But the addiction is still there, right? So the damage they've done is still there. Narcan is an amazing opportunity to give folks a second chance in an opioid overdose. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'll also talk about the giveaway tomorrow. But Sherry, if you would, tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think I ever shared this with you, but I was also a drug counselor.
Really?
Yes.
How did you not share that with me?
Well,
I was a drug addict.
I'm saving it. I'm saving it for here. Yes, I did that for about 4.5 years, and I actually did have some of my clients that did overdose. But, when you're on that side, when you're on this side of the table, it's a whole lot different than when it is your son. And like I said before, this is certainly a testimony that I never imagined that I would have to give. When my kids were growing up, I let them know, you have a propensity for alcoholism, addiction, whatever. And so I was very, very vocal with them, very honest with them about that. Thought it was going to make a difference. It didn't. A few years ago, I started noticing that my son was having some erratic behavior. I started seeing some things in the house. You know, there's not a better detective than a mother that's suspicious. So I would find things in the house, but you know, your denial system picks up. And of course, the boys hide. You know, they would. What's a good word? They wouldn't narc on each other, so I could never tell who was doing what.
Snitches get stitches.
Exactly.
That's fair enough.
Exactly, and I have 4 sons, so
yeah. So they ain't gonna rat on each other.
No, they're not. So I could never quite place it. But AJ had gone off to school. We dropped him off. I was really happy. He was doing well, and then I got a phone call from the police. They were looking for him because he had some issues, and one of the professors were actually very worried about him. And I called his friends. We were looking for him, and they finally found him, and they tackled him when they found him because they don't know. I mean, they don't know where he's at, and they thought he was a harm to himself. So he did, unfortunately, go, and he was Baker active for a few days. He gets out. We think we're getting him help. And what I'm leading to is that this was a process. This didn't just happen one time. There were things that were going on that I didn't know about at the time because he was in Orlando. So then grades started to get bad. The money he could never account for where the money was. He was always needing money. And he should have plenty of money. I didn't understand that. Then when I went to go visit him, I looked at him. I knew something was wrong. And he was about to get evicted for some erratic behavior. And I stayed with him that night, and he went through withdrawal. He was at that time, it was benzos. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're done. You're done. This is a year and a half of this. I got to bring you home. So I brought him home. And this was a little bit over a year ago. And just when you think have things under control, you don't. Because one thing about drug addicts, alcoholics, they're good at hiding it what they want to be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So throughout a few months, I started seeing other things that I became suspicious. I was missing money. I was missing some of my own medication, and starting putting two together. And he would always deny it. And I used to know this counselor, and he was an older guy named Skip. And he used to tell me, Sherry, if their mouth is moving, they're lying. And at the time, it didn't really click. Yeah. Oh, it clicks now. It completely clicks now. But my experience was things were really deteriorating, and I had actually told one of my friends at work, I'm really worried. AJ's he's gonna die. I just had this feeling. And it's just like watching something happen, and you know it's happening, but you can't stop it, and you can't control it, and you think you do, and you put all these rules in place, and it doesn't do any good. So one night I went to bed, and I had 2 of my other sons that were spending the night, and I have one son that lives out of state. And I just kind of drifted off to that really scary, deep sleep. Mm. Only scary if you get woken up. And my youngest son comes around the stairs. He's banging on my door because I lock it. Mom, AJ's having a seizure. I do not remember getting out of bed. I do not remember. Must have flown down the stairs. So when I got to the bathroom downstairs, he was laying down on his back. And I don't talk about this very often. Mm-hmm. In fact, I didn't even tell her for a few days. She's a therapist. Yeah. I didn't even tell her. And he was blue, and he wasn't breathing. So I started doing CPR on him. My oldest son that was there called 911. And then my youngest son and I, we were trying to, you think you're going to be really calm. I wasn't that calm. I'd like to tell you I was very calm. I wasn't. And so he took over CPR, and I was trying to talk to 911 while my other son was on the phone. And we're praying out loud. We're praying so loud, and we're crying and praying. And then at the same time, he's blue, and there's no breath. And this is my baby. Mm. And for other people, they think, oh, drug addict. No, that's my son. Yeah. It's completely different. I don't know how much time passed, but all of a sudden, people were in my house, and all different kinds of uniform people. They were all men. I don't want to be sexist, but they were all men. There was even one plainclothes, and one officer came in and he was like, I got this. And then another came behind him, and then they took us to the back room, and they were asking me questions, and I couldn't think of the answers. I was so shocked. And but I had some I was with it a little bit. And I was answering questions, and they said, does he do fentanyl? And I said, no. And then I said, wait, I can't say that. I know he's a polydrug user. I don't know what he's doing. And they worked on him what seemed to be a while. And then they said, go let the ambulance in. So I went back upstairs and got the ambulance in. And as I go, my youngest son and I see another officer, and he mouths to the other one, he's dead, isn't he? And I was so shocked, but I ran up and I let the ambulance in downstairs. We have two entrances. It's a lake house, so one downstairs and one upstairs. And they came in through the garage. And I knew they had already given him Narcan once, just because I heard them. It didn't work the first time. And then they put him on the stretcher, took him in the garage, or was taking him through the garage, and they hit him again. Then I heard his voice. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, my God.
It just seems like 1 minute there he's blue. I've never seen anybody. You see that on TV. You hear it on TV. It's completely different in real life. Mm-hmm. He was blue. There was no pulse. There was absolutely nothing. And then he's talking. My mind was blown for so many different reasons. And then they took him to the hospital, and we all got in the car, and we followed, and we got there, and they made us wait outside for a little bit. In the waiting room. And when we walked to the back, we were finally able to go see him. He's sitting up. Well, now I'm mad because he's insolent. But I think he was hiding a lot of things. I think it was a defense mechanism for him. But now I'm angry because he's acting like we put him out.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so that's a whole other part of this. But that is my story. And one of the things that the officers did tell me, he said, we just came off of a call of a other overdose. That was the only reason we were in the area. Wow. Had we not been in this area, we may not have gotten here in time. And so one of the things that they had said to me was, get Narcan.
Yeah. And that is the statistics, by the way, and I'm looking at World Health Organization statistics here, and the numbers are staggering. Now, the idea being, I'm giving myself goosebumps. Your stories give me goosebumps. But the idea is that that people, you don't have to be an EMT to administer this stuff. It is literally, if I could find it, it's literally a nasal inhaler. Now, they might have used an injection, I don't know, but they also carry this stuff. And you don't prime it, it's already ready to go. You just peel it, stick it in the nostril, pump it one time, roll them on their left side, and keep monitoring for breathing. And you can do, the nice thing about Narcan, they did your son twice, you can do it several times because it won't do any damage, it could only do good. And it's blocking the receptors in the brain that are embracing the opiate, so it's temporary. It's kicking them out of, it's I forget what they called it, but it's the law of the more powerful attraction, basically, in your brain. So the Narcan is more attracted, it can overpower or displace the opiates for a time till it wears off. So it's a window of opportunity. Now, the things the first thing I think of when I hear this story, and I didn't know this story, and I've known you for 10 years or more, is the hopelessness that goes along with addiction for families. So it is, for me, I forget because I'm on this side of it all the time, right? I'm dealing with the addict all the time. So when I hear somebody talking from the other side of the table, you have to realize how much damage is done by alcohol and drug addiction in this country. I mean, I tell people that the 12-step programs have saved more lives than penicillin. And it's true, if you add in the families and the children and the mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, I had all those. I didn't have children yet, but I destroyed my drinking destroyed people's lives. And so the amount of, you see the signs, you don't know what it is, you're not familiar with some of the signs, and then you just don't know where to proceed. And I guess that's where you would come in, Susan. What would you, having heard, you talk to somebody whose family member has those signs, how do you proceed from there? How do you begin to open that conversation? Nobody wants to hear their child's a drug addict or an alcoholic.
Well, accessing resources. Our Tampa Bay area is so rich in resources, for prevention. And as I was listening to her story, which I've heard it, before, it's like when a family's going through that, it's like grief. The stages, anger, just not believing.
Denial, yeah.
Yeah. Then acceptance, it's grief because you are losing that person for a period of time. Hopefully they recover. But as we all know, you can go back into your old habits. And so, the resources are going to be very important.
Yeah.
And then, I know Sherry and I talked about this one time. As humans, we have to have a purpose in life, and, we don't know exactly with her son, but he had a purpose. He was going to school, so, he maybe wasn't in the right field, but having that purpose is another thing that I do talk to people about. What is it that is your passion? What is it that you feel passionate about? Finding out what it is that gives you that hope and working with that. So resources, acknowledging that the family needs support, and then finding out what are some other things, because if you're going to the same people, the same crowd, the same habits, those things aren't working. So you've got to turn it over to something that you do feel passionate about.
And the only thing you have to change, we tell people, is everything.
Yeah.
And so and you really start over. So my plan when I quit drinking, I was 21 years old. I didn't have to shave yet. I just became legal in New York City to drink, or New York State. Mm-hmm. And I was done. I was in my second trip to the 12-step programs. I first was going to be locked up when I was 16. And then I went back on my own when I was 21. I stopped breathing when I drank. So it didn't matter. I didn't want to become a better person. I didn't want to save the world. I didn't want to do anything but not die, all by myself. I'm living with my friends now in New York, so nobody really particularly cares if I live or die. They'd be sad for a week, but it was not till I changed everything about the way I lived my life, that I even began to develop. I had to quit drinking for a while, to quit drugging for a while, to realize how sick I was in every aspect of my life. Mm-hmm. It's like peeling an onion. It just gets, you realize this led to this, this comes from this comes from that. And it, after years of bearing it, and I was fortunate that I was very young, and so I did it for 10 or 11 years rather than, 40 or 50 years like some of the people I deal with,
Right.
But, they say your disease wants you dead. I'm pretty sure mine wanted me alive and miserable. It wanted me to feel every moment of it,
Well, and you were talking about people are in their addiction or their alcoholism. We use those interchangeably. Don't know what they do to other people. We have cameras on upstairs and downstairs. So I didn't realize until I watched it later how many people were in my house. There were sirens and lights because it was 1 o'clock in the morning, all up and down the street. It was lit up.
Yeah.
And I watched myself go out, and I could hear myself crying on the video from outside. And I could hear my son, is my brother going to die? Is my brother going to die? And this was one thing I didn't even know that happened. My youngest son went out on the deck, and he was talking. What I found out later was his father, and he was sobbing. He can't die. I did everything I could. And if AJ had not made it, we would have had to live with that. Yeah. And that's one thing that I was so angry about when he was fine and he was in that bed, and he had the audacity to be insolent. And I understand it's defense mechanism. I get all that. But he has no idea what we went through. None. And he won't watch those videos.
Yeah.
He refuses to.
Well, if we look at some of the statistics, this is from the World Health Organization. About 275 million people worldwide used drugs at least once during 2016, which is amazing to me. There was an estimated 27 million people who suffer from opioid use disorder. That's a nice way of putting it. They didn't call it that when I was a kid, but that's very kind.
It's prettying it up.
Yeah, and then the roughly 450,000 people died as a result of drug use around the world, 500,000 in 2015. So the numbers are devastating. They're absolutely devastating, and we're really playing catch up. Now you talked about the resources available. The Godlogic Project has become kind of a hub for those resources because of my background. That automatically, most of my guests in the beginning, particularly, are people dealing with drugs and alcohol. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. So I was unaware, even being knee deep in it all the time, where the resources are dynamic. They come and go. This is available, then it's not available, and then you can't get this and you can't get that. So what we're going to do tomorrow with Pasco ASAP is they're literally giving away like 50,000 of these Narcan things or something to anybody. Mm-hmm. So that is something that when you think about 26,500 roughly lay people have administered this and saved somebody's life. And that makes up something like 70% of the, so only 30% are EMTs and doctors and nurses. Mm-hmm. So more than 2/3 are people like you and me that had it in the house just in time. So it's important, and this stays in the studio. I mean, especially we have it in the house because of what I do, but we have it all over this church. But this is it's so overlooked, right? And people don't know how to put a name to it or identity to it. And then we also have the stigma that goes along with it, not just for the addict, but the addict's family. Mm. So my mother used to tell a story of denying that she was my mother at a public event, at a public party. They asked if, any relation to Kevin Haggerty, and she said no. And then came home and tried to kill me because what was I doing out there when, what are these people talking about, this Kevin Haggerty? They're telling stories about, Billy the Kid, and it's me, and that's my mother they're telling it to, So it was, you don't realize at the time how much damage you're doing. But my brother tells a story, my older brother tells a story about how he still has dreams that he goes to the morgue to identify me. And it's 30 years later,
right?
So you don't know, your son doesn't know, and the addict generally doesn't know. Addicts are, if I were to give it a single definition, they are self-centered to the extreme. So what they care about more than anything else is themselves, really, no matter what kind of sob story they give you. Perfect example, I'm convinced that self-centeredness is the other ingredient in a relapse. If it was just being an alcoholic, I'd be drunk right now, right? So there's something else that you have to be. And I think it's self-centered, because if the state comes and takes your kids and you drink, you're not thinking of your kids. You're thinking of yourself. Mm-hmm. Your dog dies and you drink, you're not thinking of your dog. You're thinking of yourself. It's always self. The last thought before an addict uses again is self, regardless of what they were thinking up until that point,
Yeah, I've given up saying, how do you think this affects us?
Yeah.
He completely disregards that, completely. And just, I wanted to touch on something before I forget about it. Bad memory now. Is that on the way over here, and I was praying, and I was like, okay, I need you to give me the words. I need you to give whatever it is that you want me to say that somebody needs to hear. Please tell me. Let me know what that is. And I just want, if you're dealing with substance abuse or whatever it is, I don't want to use all the pretty words. Alcoholism, substance abuse, all that. Somebody wants to hear you. Somebody wants to hear your story. Somebody does care. Somebody, even if it's on the other end of an 800 number, there is somebody that wants to hear it, and somebody that understands.
Yep.
I believe that. I really, really believe that.
And our literature tells us, our literature being the 12-step literature, tells us we're uniquely qualified to help when no one else can. So because if I went to AA, I just said it, and it was lab coats and ink blots, I would have grabbed a cup of coffee and left. But it was people that, you know, in my case, were 20 years older than me, that had some of the very same problems I had.
That's
right?
what
When I heard them speak, I knew when I was 16 that I was in big trouble, and it ruined my drinking and drugging for the next 5 years till I went back on my own. So there are people that are waiting in clubhouses and churches and at 12-step meetings all over the country every night to talk to a newcomer and to help somebody. So when they pass a telephone number list around, there might be 50 people there, and 20 of them put their name on the list. That means that 20 of them are saying, "Call me," right? They're not compelled to do that. They don't have to do that. They're saying, "I am willing to answer the phone when you call," right, and make a difference. You know, so tragically, the results, the fruit, statistically, not very good, right? The harvest is plenty and the workers are few, so we tend to celebrate the victories. I get a lot of joy now when I see my buddies that were on the podcast the other night all got 3 years at the same time.
I saw that.
And I was so, you know, we had so much fun doing the podcast. We had fun watching them get sober together, you know, but that made a podcast because it's not very common. It doesn't happen. Right. We stay, as a pastor, I stay focused on the vine and keep my mind off the fruit, because if I stay focused on the fruit, I know that I haven't helped many people with all my effort, you know. So right. It is a labor of love that these people are at those meetings and waiting, you know, or on an 800 number and waiting to help, you know. Absolutely. And this Narcan thing, nobody's getting paid to be there.
No.
You know, all those people that are going to set up and the church opens up to them and they set up, and it's all for free, you know. And they've got real jobs too.
Right.
I guess I'm just sitting here listening to the two of you, and I'm thinking, our world, if there was one thing that I would hope for our world in the change that needs to happen, for not just substance abuse, but for a lot of things, a lot of trauma that happens to people, is that we can't keep secrets. Yeah. We have to change that. We have to talk. You know, if we can't handle it, you know, seek out the resources. But families keep secrets that lead to substance abuse, addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that was the case here.
No,
but
I trust me. He had a great childhood.
Yeah.
But, you know, when they go away to college, that's a risky time, as we talked about before. But, you know, we as families, we have to learn how to talk to one another and open up. Because I think the families that I've worked with for years, you know, low income to high income, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Some families talk and some don't. And I think that would be one thing that I would wish and hope for in this world, is that we do more talking, and not just talking, but listening to what's going on.
It is common to hear in the rooms that you're only as sick as your secrets. So you're as sick as your darkest secret. And until you speak that into the light, not to sound too much like a pastor, but until you speak that into the light, it's toxic. It's killing you slow. Mm-hmm. I've become convinced that an addict or alcoholic active in their addiction live like there's nothing left to lose. Yep. And somebody in active recovery lives like there's nothing left to hide. So we grow up in public, right? Our ass is showing in recovery. That's the way it is in a room. Uh-huh. You know, everybody knows there's a level of accountability that goes along with that. So you would, some guys will go to a different meeting every night and not be accountable, never make a friend. Me, for 17 years, never really make a friend, right? So but I was not accountable to anybody. Nobody really knew me even after 17 years of being around. They kind of knew me, but they didn't know me. Okay. I can tell you on a personal note that probably 13 years ago, right before I met you, actually, I was going to kill myself over money. I had kids. My grown kids were little then. Mm-hmm. And I had employees and I had customers. I didn't have a friend in the world. I was halfway through my life. And I had nobody to talk to, 39 years old or whatever I was. Mm-hmm. And I realized at that point that I need to get to a meeting. And I started going, and that's 12, 13 years ago, I really jumped into the middle of it and did the things that they suggested I do, and the pain was in the resistance. It was in me not doing it, so what made it so hard, you It's it's those things you don't talk about that kill you.
Well, exactly. And I'll share with you that he is still actively using.
I was going to ask.
Yes, he was for about a month and a half. We went to meetings, and he didn't want to go by himself, so I went with him. And I sat there. I didn't want to be there only because I felt like these stories were so personal, and it felt very voyeuristic.
Mm-hmm.
And but he wouldn't go unless I went with him, so I went with him. I would do anything. I would do anything to help him, but I can't do it for him. But even now, he thinks he's got everybody fooled. And I said, AJ, you're the only one that believes your lies. I don't understand that. We all see it. We all see it. Why don't we just talk about it? I'd rather just talk about it than pretend like it's not there.
And there's 4 boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like big as mountains, if I remember
Yes.
correctly. So they, how do the other boys handle it? How do they deal with them?
One son lives out of state. He doesn't want anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Common.
well, and his philosophy is like some of my other friends. They're like, kick him out. Kick him out. Okay.
Tough
really?
love.
Tough love. Okay. I know logically and sometimes in the books it tells you just tough love, kick him out. Okay. Then I really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Then he's just on the street. Now he's selling or doing whatever he has to do. At least if he's in the house, I can see him. My very youngest son, he vacillates back and forth. He loves him so much. But at the same time, he gets really disgusted with him because it disrupts the whole house, especially when I think he kind of binge uses.
Yeah.
So we're okay for a few days, and then for a couple of days, everything in the house is off kilter. He's raising Cain about this, he's raising Cain about that, and I can tell because the fervor builds up. And that's how I know he's really either he's using or he's wanting to use. So, and we all know it, we all feel it, and we all walk around like this, just tense. And then my other son kind of idolizes him, even though he's older. He'll do anything for AJ, anything, even enable him sometimes.
Is this the youngest son?
No, the youngest son is the one that kind of gets a little bit tired of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, he's like, just kick him out, just kick him out. And then when I talk to him and say, okay, you know what the reality of that is, then he's more than likely, he's going to do whatever he has to survive on the street. And I actually did try to kick him out. I packed his stuff, and it was 3:45 in the morning. I can't remember the particulars about it because there's been so many things that have happened, things that he's done, things I can't believe that he ever do that my son would do.
Yeah.
It just mind-boggling. I heard something. 30 minutes, he was back in the house. And I said, how'd you get back in the house? My other son had let him in.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, it is tough, and I've had to do it. And, with my son's mother, I've had to hold a really hard line, even when she could see him or not, because she could not be trusted even alone with him. Yeah. So it is, and it's not something you want to do. It's then something I have to protect the little kid from. So I ultimately, when he began to blame me, I sat him down and explained to him, this isn't just Daddy being mean. I'm not winning an argument here. This is what's happening. I didn't give him details or anything like that. But eventually, 8 years old, I had to sit down and tell him she's doing her best, but she can't be alone with you right now. And that's the state, not me, that says that, And she loves you and she's trying. And, she didn't see him for a couple, 3 years. And that was always, in his head, it was, my daddy's so mean, he won't even let me see my mommy, Mm-hmm. So I facilitate it as often as I can. But, and it's getting better now, I think. But there's times where it's the answer, and it's hard. I think we can't insulate people from their bottom, because that's where the want to recover is. Unfortunately, the bottom doesn't always end well. Yeah. Jail's institution and death those are the 3 ways it ends. So it is. It's important to realize that there is a lot of help out there. I'm going to put myself on camera, which I don't generally do, but if your son ever needs anything, of course, just reach out to me. I'll take him anywhere. If he's willing to do the footwork, I'll take him anywhere. But if you guys have somebody in your family struggling with addiction or any kind of spiritual need you have, email me at godlogicproject@gmail.com. If I don't have a resource for you, I'll have connections that do. And if I don't have that, I'll let you know. But one way or another, I'll do whatever I can to help you. So if you got a problem, email me, godlogicproject@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps support this ministry. Just click subscribe, ring the alert bell, and every time we put up new content, you'll get a message. So we have, this is not a story that I'm unfamiliar with. So this is, I've had this conversation I don't know how many times, and I can't imagine how many times my family has. So it's never easy. Knowing you, it makes it harder, of course, for us, because it's different when I don't know anybody. You know, once I get to know them, it becomes harder. We have a kind of a tendency to, we get close to people, then they don't make it, and then we just pretend it doesn't bother us, but it does, you know. So it is a very, very difficult situation. But in this case, what we're talking about, I know that, like I said before, the 12 steps have saved more lives than penicillin, and they really have. It's the only solution. It's a spiritual condition. We're given a daily reprieve based on our spiritual condition, and that's it. So we need to maintain a certain level of spirituality. You don't have to be a pastor, but you have to maintain a certain spirit. You have to walk in the light. You can't walk in the darkness and expect to succeed in recovery, right? You can't have secrets. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of resources available for folks, and one of them is Narcan. Now, this is something that there's been some controversy because some police departments and sheriff's office won't carry it. They don't want the liability or whatever the argument they might make is. But it's available at least tomorrow for free. Mm-hmm. And here in West Pasco, we have a pretty big problem. And you know, I'm not just in West Pasco. I'm in Holiday in West Pasco, so we have a really big problem around where I live. Mm-hmm. It's 5 minutes from here on Trouble Creek Road. They're going to be giving this away to folks tomorrow, and that is going to be game-changing, I think. If we can give people a second chance, a third chance, whether we like it or not, a fourth chance, at some point, everybody's redeemable. If I was redeemable twice, right? I got saved from my addiction, then I got saved from my suicide 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't worth saving the first time. I mean, I wasn't like a good kid that made mistakes. I was just a bad kid, you know. So it was, God had a plan for that, right? We talked about before the show the difference between your goal for life shouldn't just to be happy. I heard someone else say this, but your life shouldn't be happy as much as it should have meaning, mm-hmm. right? So
it's purpose.
Yeah, so you talked about it earlier, so that the real secret to life is having purpose or meaning in your life, not just to be happy, right? If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. Lots of things make us happy that are pretty bad, you know? Yeah. So it has more to do with, I hate to say it this way, but I became a better person, you know? Right. So maybe not, I mean, I'm a better person now than 10 years ago when we met even. Mm-hmm. I can't explain it. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't get struck by lightning, but I just didn't want to be, I saw things in people and I saw things in myself, but I didn't want to be that person, right? Slowly but surely I worked my way out of that. The first thing we need to do is we bring addicts and alcoholics back from the gates of insanity and death.
Right.
And it's absolute insanity. I'm choking myself up now. There is a feeling of absolute abandonment that an alcoholic or an addict feels, abandoned by everybody, even if they haven't, we feel like they have. It helps us justify our situation.
Worthy.
Yeah. So it is not us, it's everybody else.
Okay.
I don't know how many guys I've sponsored over the years that it was the judge, it was the cops, it was the wife, it was the boss, it was the liquor store owner. It was everybody but him. You know, doesn't stand a chance.
And that's what I don't understand quite why. I see these beautiful young people who have families that love them and would do anything to make it go away, but yet still deny it, still deny it's a problem, still deny the pain they're causing other people. Yeah. And we would do anything for them. I mean, absolutely anything. And with the Narcan, it gave him a chance to have another day. So maybe the next day, he turns it all around. He turns his life around.
You never know.
You never know. And maybe if not that day, the next day. But if he didn't have that next day, there would be no more chances.
I'm against the death penalty for that reason. I think there's always that chance of redemption, whether they get life in prison or not, like our friend Buzz, who was doing 2 life sentences for murder. and now as a free man. He's not even on parole anymore. He's amazing testimony. He's one of my episodes on the show. So he's like a recurring guest on here, but there's always that chance for redemption. And ultimately, as a pastor, I would tell people we're in this world, we're not of this world. So there is something else after this, and that is our ultimate goal, is that relationship, that Genesis 2 relationship with our Creator that is promised to us, depending on kind of our Genesis 3 relationship and how we honor that, So it's we're kind of stuck in this situation for now, but not forever.
Right. And you said something a little while ago, and you were talking about how, you're a better person you were 10 years ago and maybe a better person than you were 5 years ago, whatever better person means. I was thinking to myself, I've been a good mother. I gave them a really good childhood. And have I been yes, I've been a really good mother. Have I been a good Christian mother? Now, that's a different answer. I can't say that all the time I've been a good Christian mother.
No, I have been. My children have. I was preaching. I wasn't pasteurized. I wasn't safe for human consumption yet, but I was living one way and talking another way to my now adult kids, and they told me, I did the things I did because you did the things you did. I saw you do it, and so I did it too. Sexually. So I had to come to grips with that. The strange thing is we're called to be the spiritual leaders of our family. Men are. In the absence of a husband, then the woman is, of course, or the absence of a husband that's spiritual, then the woman is, of course. But we need to lead these kids spiritually and first, right? Our most important job. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that all these years. I figured it out the last 9 or 10 years, but I didn't know it a long time ago,
Right.
I just thought I'd, put my foot down and punch holes in walls and everybody will do what I say long enough.
Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to point something out to your listeners. Unfortunately, research shows that relapse is very, very common, and we hope that first gutter that someone with addiction falls into, it's the lesson. But the statistics are out there, and they prove relapse is very, very a reality. Mm. And hopefully they won't have to experience the gutter, but that is what I am no expert in substance abuse. My family life has been touched just like every family's life has, with either drug addiction, alcoholism, but relapse is very, very common and usually predicted. Mm-hmm.
People tend to want to recover from the consequences of their addiction.
Yeah.
Very few of them really understand what it means to recover from the addiction itself, to adopt the principles of recovery: honesty, integrity, perseverance. So it's not easy. They say it's simple, but it's not easy, and that's true. That's why you do it with a sponsor or a mentor. That's why you network and have the community that goes along with the unity that goes along with it too, because in and of yourself, your best thinking got you there, right? So Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I tell people, if somebody asked me how long I was going to stay stuck on stupid, you can't fix stupid with stupid, right? So my broken mind isn't going to fix your broken mind or my broken mind. We need somebody with a well mind, right? So they say the recovery rooms are brainwashing. Well, my brain needed a good washing, and I know a lot of brains that do, I needed to be brought back into simple, just daily living. And what I tell the guys I mentor all the time is there's just, I tell them, what do you got to do today to get through today? Be reasonably happy, not hurt anybody, and learn something new. 4 things. Do what you got to do for today. Don't hurt anybody. Be reasonably happy. You're not going to fart fairy dust, but you don't have to be depressed either. Reasonably happy, and learn something new. Not a big Tony Robbins wouldn't sell any books with that, or Joel Osteen, but string together 365 of those.
Right.
Where are you in a year from now? You haven't hurt anybody in a year. You've been pretty happy for a year. I remember not being able to put together coherent thoughts in a row in recovery when I was struggling with depression and anxiety, that I just knew that if I could just get 2 coherent thoughts in a row, I might get some traction here, but I can't, And I went on anxiety medicine a long time ago now, maybe 7 years ago or 8 years ago. And for a year I had to, because I couldn't even think straight. I was so upset about, the mess that I had made, actually,
Right.
Well, that anxiety was, that's the thing. There's an underlying reason in that psyche.
Mm.
Whether it was anxiety, it could have started off as a child, and particularly now our kids, all the testing, it adds to the anxiety, the social acceptance, the peer pressure. So there's the beginnings of it. And depending on your psyche, that's an underlying thing that they're masking with the alcohol and the drugs.
Yeah. They're trying to fill a God-shaped hole with something besides God, I think, as a pastor. So what we've done is we've removed God from our lives at some point, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to fill that hole back in, because we have a God consciousness, an awareness that the apes don't have, right?
Right.
We have abstract thought. I can tell you the 4 horsemen of my apocalypse are going to be drugs, alcohol, women, and money. I mean, I made a God of all of them, and none of them fit that hole. Status, ego. People will make a God of themselves before they make a God of anything. I don't think we can break the other 9 commandments till we break the first one,
Right.
till we make a God of something else, including ourselves. The Sermon on the Mount, which is Matthew, switch camera angles, is Matthew 5, 6, and 7, kind of takes the Old Testament laws and makes it an inside job. So now I no longer battle adultery, I battle lust. If I can handle lust, then adultery never becomes an issue, right? If I don't covet, then I'm not going to steal, right? If I don't covet your life, I'm not going to drink or drug, right? Because I think you have something that I don't have. You're happier or got a prettier wife or more money or whatever it is. What do I got to do today to get through today? Be reasonably happy, not hurt anybody, and learn something new. I mean,
Right.
that's simple, but it's easy.
Well, I think it's a realistic viewpoint. I'm a counselor. She's a therapist, so I can say that we do work in education. We work together, and we do see a lot of kids that have trauma or families that don't necessarily thrive, or they are, I don't know. Some of their environments are not very good, and we do our very best to support them. And I wish that my story was unique, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Even on Facebook, I have 3 or 4 people on Facebook that have lost their own children from overdose, from drug use. That is so sad.
Yeah.
It is so sad. What a waste. And this is maybe controversial what I say. It's one thing if you get ill. Okay, but when you do it to yourself, is that a terrible thing to say? But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It is. You don't.
It's a human choice.
If you had cancer, people would show compassion. But because you have addiction,
yeah, they don't.
people can be less compassionate because they think, and then to some degree, at least a couple of years ago, it was a choice. I mean, it may not. I can tell you that people drink and drug without their permission. I mean, I didn't wake up in the morning. I woke up in the morning. I had to drink. I had to go to bed the night before, make sure there was still alcohol on the table when I fell asleep, because when I woke up, I would need it just to get out of the bed and go. I was a maintenance blackout drinker at 21, so I was like a Bowery bum, but 21-year-old Bowery bum. So at some point, they lose the capacity
To think.
Yeah, to make that kind of decision. So here's the argument I get all the time, and I want to talk controversy. I have a lot of Christians, other pastors, that tell me you just need Jesus and you'll never drink again. And I think that works, and it could work with the click of a finger, but it doesn't seem to work. So I think you need the 12-step programs of recovery, then pursue your faith, right? But you cannot make a rational, sane decision in that condition, right?
Treatment.
So the 12-step programs will bring you back from the gates of insanity or death, which was my story, and then it could evolve from there. Now, that doesn't mean that God won't and can't, at the snap of his fingers, at a simple breath, turn your whole life around, but he doesn't seem to do it that way. Not my experience, anyway. So the 12-step program, the literature talks about different types of drinkers, and it focuses on drinking, or my program does. So they'll say there's social drinkers. People like me hate them. There's binge drinkers, people that'll go on a bender but then stop, not drink again for 6 months, and then do it again. There's trouble drinkers. and those are the ones we're mostly familiar with. But given the right motivation, they'll moderate or abstain. So they will, if they're going to lose their wife, their home, their family, their job, whatever, then, or their freedom, they'll moderate or abstain their drinking, right? And then there's alcoholics, and it doesn't matter what you take away from them, what they stand to lose. They're drinking today. They'll figure out a way to get around it somehow, but they will rationalize and justify, I don't need my kids, I don't need my wife, I don't need my job. That's why they end up wandering around the woods in Pasco County drunk, because they've lost the ability to decide whether or not they're going to drink or not. Now, if that is the final step, or if they are predisposed to that, that's really for doctors, to figure out. But there are people that don't get a choice, and when you're talking opiates, I mean, you're almost addicted right away.
Yeah.
Right. I had patients that they told me that they were prescribed for pain. Within days, they knew that they loved it. They felt it. Then that was it for them. So I think you have to be careful with that kind of medication. But you said something a little while ago about the stigma. I will say that all the officers, and there were a ton of them in my house, treated all of us and him with utmost respect.
Yeah.
Now, when I had gone to Orlando to pick him up at the hospital one time for another incident, and I rushed there as fast as I could, driving, and only to get there, and he was impaired. And the hospital staff was so disgusted with him, they just wanted me to take him and go. Now, was he being completely nice? No. But he's still a person, and he's still my son, and he still deserves your respect because he's sick. So I really took offense to that. I don't know.
Well, and everybody's broken. I mean, you don't. I don't run into anybody, or I try not to. I tend to try to be patient because I don't know what that other person's going through too. So this is what I mean by being a better person. I consider the people around me now. So if somebody's giving me a hard time, I have to decide if this person is part of my life that I have to address this, or am I not going to see this person again? So good riddance, right? So it's not my job to correct the person at 7-Eleven, because I may never be at that 7-Eleven again. If it's my child or a family member, very different. But everybody, I'm amazed at the people I talk to that seem to have the greatest lives ever on social media and when they come to church. And then when they're in the studio here talking to me in private, it's a tragedy. But they've got BMWs, they got nice clothes, they got, they were in Europe last week. Everything's fine, but they're miserable. And it is absolutely a godlessness. And I think that's, ultimately what it always comes back to. We have this insanity in our world right now, mass shootings and drug addiction and everything else. And it is the byproduct, I think, of easing God out of our lives. We wanted a godless society, and now on some level we're getting to see what that looks like, and it's terrible. And so I pray for a revival, that people will kind of quit fighting, cease fighting it, and just realize, it's better when we have a moral compass and absolute truth than when we don't. We can't have 345 million different truths in America. It's not going to work.
Right, you can't pick and choose.
Yeah, we need that North Star to guide us. So it is. It's tough to navigate, I think, through life, and it's getting tougher without that. All right. So this is kind of the gist of the reason for Godlogic is it's almost in some circles I'm a cartoon character for the things I believe. It's just funny that I would believe I have an invisible friend or whatever. Now to me it's super logical, and I'm kind of that way anyway. I'm a little on the nerdy side. I raised AJ, so the world's largest nerd. So it is. I think it's just better. Whatever that means moving forward, it's just better that we have a commonality in right and wrong, and we stop trying to blur every single line we come across, because it's impossible for the next generation to navigate. And it's going to be even worse another generation from now. Things just that don't make sense now that will make sense a year from now, just blur the lines further, and we end up almost burying ourselves, and it scares me, as a country, as a society. I appreciate you guys coming on the show, And this is such an important thing. It's amazing to me that we've known each other so long, and I've met your sons, but I really didn't know much of the story. So I'm glad to be part of that, and if I can help in any way, of course, always I'll do that for anybody that needs help. But if the idea that we didn't keep it a secret, that I put it on Facebook what I was doing tomorrow, that I understand the importance of anonymity, but how many times have people called me because they knew, because I don't keep it a secret, my background, that I might be a guy that can help, right? So at some level, stigma or not, you got to get out there and you got to make a difference, right? So I put on Facebook that I'm volunteering at this awesome giveaway tomorrow or next week, and then you're like, oh, that's right, Kevin does that. Let me call him because I have a story to tell, and so on. So we don't want to be completely anonymous to the point where we're hiding in the shadows, you know. Right. So sometimes you got to take it on the chin. So I don't put it on a job application, though. No, I don't lead with it. So the speaking of the Narcan giveaway, I thought I had. Yes, I do. So tomorrow night, I'm going to read it to you, then I'll put it up. Tomorrow night, there's a Narcan giveaway, August 6th, at Calvary Chapel Worship Center, the competition. Right up here at 6825 Trouble Creek Road in Newport Richey, 34653. They're going to be giving away Narcan and telling folks how to use it, keeping it on hand. And if it, again, if this type of effort can give people like Sherry's son another chance, a second chance or a third chance, we don't get to decide how many chances they deserve. It starts at 6 o'clock, and there'll be a panel discussion at 7 o'clock, and I'm going to put up the advertisement for that. I encourage you guys to come out, meet the folks from the Godlogic Project, which is just me. So not really anybody to meet. I'll bring my son. I'll put a Godlogic shirt on you, and you can.
I'll wear it.
You can meet Sherry, the Godlogic girl.
Woohoo!
And then I'll put a link to this when the video is approved by YouTube. It's streaming live now, but it'll ultimately go up, and I'll put in metadata and stuff like that. And I'll put a link for the information for that tomorrow. Any closing thoughts you ladies want to close with before we sign off?
Any closing? I just encourage anyone that really they're struggling. They think that they're hopeless. That nobody cares. Someone does care.
Yeah.
Someone cares about you until you care about you.
Yep.
I promise.
They'll love you till you start to love yourself.
That's
again,
right.
You know?
Absolutely.
It is a self-loathing involved in that self-obsession. It's a two-headed monster for sure. You know, they're egomaniacs with an inferiority complex, which as a therapist you can say is a bad combination. Am I right?
Oh yeah. But we all have our stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Yes. And that this world has made us think that we're supposed to be these perfect people, and we're not.
Yeah. Don't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides, because I can tell you from personal experience, the people that look like they got it all together on Facebook are in here during the week telling me, you know, they don't want to be married anymore, or they don't think they can raise their kids, or whatever it is. And we've got to get past the point where we've got to stop doing what feels good and start doing what does good, right? We need purpose and meaning in our lives. And we've gotten everything backwards, and we wonder why we struggle to navigate this minefield. And then our kids coming behind us, it's a whole different minefield by this time next month or next year, you know. And so what's right and what's wrong, it's tough and getting tougher. So I pray for everybody. I pray for America. No one told you they love you today. Wait, we're going to sign off here. No one told you they love you today. God loves you. So do I. Receive that. Be blessed. And we'll speak soon. Bye. Thank you for supporting the Godlogic Project. And if no one's told you they love you today, God loves you. So do I. Receive that. Be blessed. We'll speak soon. This has been a Rev Kev production. Your mileage may vary.
Shut up, Kevin.